I don't know what to say. I don't know. Here we are.
Listening to the Iranian president, who has practically disappeared, but he appears publicly to say that it is impossible, they say, to force a nation to surrender through air power and bombings. He says it exactly when Donald Trump sends a message. They say that they are going to resume the bombings against Iran and that they are going to attack it very hard. The President of the United States reveals that basically they have taken him for a fool. Just like that, they haven't fooled him, he says himself. Gerardo. Donald Trump, and in this message, well, he assures that they have taken too long to negotiate an agreement, and now they are going to pay the price, he says. They will pay the price, says Donald Trump, while attacks from Iran are already being observed against the United States Apache helicopter, against bases in Jordan, Bahrain, and even Kuwait. He would have warned today that the bombings against Iran would be, let's say, starting, according to the negotiators. Even the negotiators have been treating us like idiots. It's an escalation that, well, is going to take a turn, and we're going to hit it very hard, says Trump. We are very close to an agreement, but they keep making fun of us. They keep treating us like idiots, says Donald Trump in this tremendous message, obviously. And look, there are several facts that catch my attention because this has gone around the world very quickly. And there are reactions from Iran warning that this war in the next phase could see the conflict spreading to other countries, even in Europe and America. Iranian state media reported that the US attacks may have hit 2 reservoirs in southern Iran, leaving 20,000 residents without water and creating a serious problem for the region's water supply network. Unfortunately, after the attack, 20,000 residents of the region have lost access to safe drinking water, and temperatures are currently ranging between 45 and 50 degrees. So, well, obviously life in that area has become extremely difficult and critical for the local residents, according to Iranian state television. The spokesperson for the Iranian Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Ismail Bakel, stated that the US attacks may have put the ceasefire negotiations at risk. So, it was supposedly the US attacks that put the negotiations at risk, especially considering attacks on this civilian area, right? On the other hand, Fox News also reports that President Trump says he is close to ordering new attacks against Iran's energy and transportation infrastructure. This American media outlet also claims that the US naval blockade has effectively cut off Iran's ability to do business, to pay the military, or to meet its financial obligations. Describing it as a blockade, the most successful blockade in the history of naval warfare, and saying that Iran would quickly become a failed nation. That's the message that appears out there on Fox News, which is a media outlet that has a very close relationship with President Trump, although lately they've also had their differences, right? In the face of this war, the United States is already warning that there could be a more extensive recruitment. Let's go into the details of this topic because it's very important for our friends who are Americans, who are watching us, who are Hispanic, but who already have papers. Let's say they're already from there or were born there. Well, this is a topic that will matter a lot to them because they could end up being recruited for the war, even compulsorily. First of all, well, thank you for joining us. Today is June 10th here, where I am. It's 1:39 in the morning. We're here in Monterrey, in the northeast of Mexico. And well, I want to thank the community for joining us, for giving us a like, for sharing, and for helping us out with that. Your participation in this project is extremely important on this Spanish language international news channel. Thank you for being here. Greetings to Elisa, Eliseo, Panterita, Roble, and everyone joining us. Thank you and have a great day, everyone. Daniel, how have you been? Eliseo, look, this is really interesting because we're already talking about them getting ready for a bigger war, not just a special operation, as they like to call it, right? The war with Iran was raising concerns again, particularly about a possible military draft in the United States. After the White House spokesperson, Karen Leavitt, confirmed that they say this option cannot be ruled out. This is being reported because the conflict, which began on February 28, has continued to escalate the possibility that the war between the United States and Iran will require more troops. It began to cause concern in the United States, and they say that the door will not be closed to a possible mandatory military draft. This also appeared on another of Trump's favorite media outlets, which is Fox News Sunday, a program where the official was questioned, the president's spokesperson, right? About the fear of American families regarding an agreement about it, a possible draft. In other words, being required to go to a war they don't even agree with. Other Hispanic media outlets in the United States, like Univision, have also been commenting on this issue, about the possibility that the commander-in-chief, in other words, Donald Trump, is developing or considering the possibility of a forced draft to carry out an attack. So in a way, let's say more extensively, for now, it's still a military operation that's practically by air. I mean, almost all the attacks are by air, right? But so far, it's not ruled out that they might go in with infantry at different points. Thinking about maybe taking Kersh Island, Kars Island, and some strategic areas to take control of energy or oil. Today, Donald Trump made a huge revelation, right? Because Donald Trump talks about how they would have stolen, right? He says taken, not stolen, but the word is what it is, right? I mean, that they would have stolen oil from Iran, and not only that, in massive quantities, right? He says this exclusively from the Oval Office. Let's watch the moment, because this is, well, one for the record books, let's say. Let's listen to what Donald Trump says.
Which I'm just announcing today for the first time. But we've been taking out millions of barrels.
He says, I'm announcing it for the first time, and we have taken millions of barrels of oil.
Millions of barrels.
Millions of barrels of oil.
But now I'm going to tell you because they just figured it out. So now that they figured it out, I can tell you it was very hard.
Entre los iraníes, por eso ya lo puedo revelar, por eso ya lo puedo decir.
Me, I wanted to say it so badly. I didn't want to ruin it, but it was very hard.
But for a long time, I wanted to say it. But millions of barrels of oil have come out. Millions of barrels have been taken. It doesn't explain how Iran realized that supposedly millions of barrels were being taken. Why were millions of barrels of oil being taken? And in any case, where are those millions of barrels, right? Who has them? Who is operating them? Who is moving them? No, how did they take them? Right? He never explains anything, just like he always does with these announcements where things stay unclear. This situation, well, obviously has caught a lot of attention because people are wondering what that movement really was. I mean, where did it happen? When did it happen? Right? If it really happened at all, you know? We'll see about that. Distintos. 6 infrastructure sites inside Lebanon. 6 infrastructure sites. This was mainly towards the southern part of Lebanon where Hezbollah is operating at that moment. But the point here is, first, these are 6 targets that but they haven't just attacked this. This also, in theory, complicates the possible agreement, right? Well, I think it's already clear that there's no way forward for this. Israel began a new military offensive against Hezbollah positions in southern Lebanon, in which, according to the forces, 6 different infrastructure sites were destroyed in areas around Tyre, for example, toward the south of the Mediterranean shores. That is, toward the coast. Apparently, this attack took place. Let's go to the map to see where the city of Tyre is, so we can see what's going on. It's here, in this area that's on the border with Israel. This is the city of Tyre, a coastal city, and this is where the operation took place at 6 different points. There are some things that haven't been revealed, but among the targets attacked was a facility allegedly used to launch explosive drones against Israeli forces deployed near the border. The operation also included attacks against projectile launchers prepared to fire and against fighters linked to this Shiite group. This move would happen just days after an escalation that had already taken place with Iran. It seems like Israel is overconfident in the sense of saying, I can attack and raise tensions with Iran and at the same time keep tensions with Hezbollah at their highest. It seems like carrying out those operations at the same time isn't really a problem. We have to acknowledge that right now there's a huge political factor. There almost always has been political factors in Netanyahu's military operations, right? Yes. In which his position is strengthened when there are military movements. So, in light of that, even the message that Donald Trump gave, saying, look, the other day he mocked Netanyahu for wanting to run for re-election again, right? He mocked that issue. And Netanyahu today announced that he's going to elections. Again, let's see. The Israeli Chief of Staff, Eyal Samir, made a statement that has also generated international concern, since he claims that the recent attack against Iran was only preparation for a more powerful action. So on one hand, they say what's happening with Iran is just a taste. We're also attacking Hezbollah. In other words, there are more than enough conflicts. I insist on that matter. The situation obviously becomes delicate. And there's also a very clear division between what, well, in any case, Trump wants and what the Netanyahu administration wants, right? That's obviously huge as well. The current conflict is directly connected to the broader confrontation between Israel and Iran, turning this into a double front war. There could be a third factor, which would be the Houthis, Utipos, because the Utipos have already started to launch significant operations as well. So let's not rule out that this could also be relevant, right? I mean, that attacks of that kind could happen, right? Also, on the other hand, Donald Trump warned that Iran will have to face consequences for what he called, "They are the bully of the Middle East and they're already dead," says the President of the United States. He has been making very intense statements, thinking that maybe with those statements, I don't know if he's trying to confirm an operation or what he's trying to achieve with these comments. They're not really talking about negotiations anymore, are they? I mean, even though they've said that negotiations could still go on, that they could try to make progress, and that oil is kind of in a state of expectation. Yesterday it was at $94. Now it's at $95, so it went up by $1. But really, well, no, it doesn't feel like there's a big movement in that sense. We'll see what happens later. But I mean today, and it's already been 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 days in a row that the S&P 500, SP 500 has been falling after being at its all-time highs. It's been dropping pretty much all this week, right? So, entonces, there was also employment data that the markets didn't like, which, by the way, was positive. But the markets usually don't like that kind of data. And well, there's been a reaction from the markets in that sense. Now let's move on to other important matters as well. But first, let me tell you that this topic is just starting to take off. There are already some pretty strong things being heard over there in Iran. It seems like maybe the attacks are happening. It's very likely, at least according to intelligence, but just a detail. According to a survey, only 1 out of every 10 Europeans now considers the United States their ally. And this is important considering that this war, if you notice, hasn't had support from any allied country. They haven't been interested in participating. According to the survey, European trust in the United States as a security guarantee has reached a historic low. Only 1 out of every 10 people in 15 countries consider the United States as an ally, meaning they no longer see it that way. Notice how quickly things change after being allies for decades. I mean, there are generations who from the time they were born until now have always seen the United States as allies with Europe, right? I mean, quite a few generations, right? And now the new generations and even the not so new ones, they've also realized that the alliance has either broken or it's just not the same anymore. There's no longer the trust that there used to be like in the past. The survey was published by a group of experts from the European Council on Foreign Relations. Before the summit with the G7 and before an upcoming summit with NATO, this is a reprimand, a rebuke to the Trump administration to pay attention to the people. This isn't what the governments of Europe think. This is what the European population thinks. So, who will be the new leaders elected in Europe? Those who know how to, let's say, capitalize on this situation. In other words, those politicians who see this, you know how they are too, right? They say, right now there's a trend among the population that they don't trust them. So, politicians with maybe a tough message are going to come in, right? Towards the Trump administration or even that country, right? Maybe messages about maybe not a complete separation or clash, but maybe a distancing, right? You can already see it. It's very clear with Sanchez himself, Pedro Sanchez in Spain, who has managed to capitalize on this for his political purposes, right? It worked so well for him in Europe that other Europeans started following the same guidelines and styles, like the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, among others, right? Herself, because you might say, well, the one in England is more left-leaning, and that's true, but Giorgia Meloni has done exactly the same thing, and she's right-wing, right? I mean, they've kept their distance. They've drawn a line, basically saying, hey, this is how it is. We don't want to get along with you like that, and you're not going to achieve anything with Europe that way. They're your friends, your allies, and that's not how you treat them, right? Well, it's just crazy, really crazy. While we're on this topic, we don't talk much about the World Cup anymore. It's not due to a lack of news. There is news, and we'll discuss it later. But things and the news aren't really focused on the World Cup. The news is pointing elsewhere. In any case, and I'm obviously referring to Marciano Internacional, while focusing on these conflicts in the end, right? Thank you so much to everyone who's joining us. You already know how this works. We go through each topic one by one. The morning live streams are shorter, but they go straight from one to the next, one after another. So you can watch them as if they were just one continuous stream, right? Great for those who already know how this works. You already know it goes automatically, but I want to send a huge greeting to the community. Greetings to Marvin. Yes, the World Cup, and also the Middle East. Exactly. Now let's talk about what's happening. The Somali referee has faced several challenges. They welcomed him in Somalia as a hero. I mean, he became a figure in his country because he became very famous internationally, right? And well, other topics that are happening with the World Cup that we will talk about later, not in the next live stream, but later on, okay? Because right now we're going to other topics too. The war could take a completely different turn, and much more dangerous. If right now the war with Iran and the United States has certain limits, the next phase, if it happens as it seems, could be very hard and very long, unfortunately. But let's get to that topic, and let's also update on these earthquakes that have been happening in different places. There's also an update on that. Well, let's go over there. I'll be waiting for you. The war is heading in other directions too, so let's go over there for that news.